Welcome back to the show. The time is 15 minutes past 8. You're still tuned in to Salam Media. Our first interview of the day, we'll be speaking to Shaniaé Maharaj. We'll be chatting a bit about Apartheid Israel Week. Shaniaé, thank you so much for joining us onto Salam Media and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's great to be on.
Yeah. Israel Apartheid Week. First and foremost, to someone that doesn't know, what is it? What is it all about? And why should they be involved with it?
So Israeli Apartheid Week traditionally is just 1 week, and traditionally is a form of activism that universities and schools primarily engage in to conscientize their own communities at a grassroots level. Now, with what's happening in Gaza, the ongoing onslaught, the ongoing genocide, especially the humanitarian crisis in Rafah, the BDS National Committee in Palestine has asked the international community, including the South African BDS Coalition, to amplify our activist efforts and to extend Israeli Apartheid Week not just to a week, but to a whole month. And so this year, iconically, we're having Israeli Apartheid Month. And what this really looks like on the ground is continued efforts, not just at conscientization, but also at direct change. So we're going to be engaging in things that affect change for Palestinians, not just at an awareness level, but also at a policy level. So here we're going to be engaging in protests. We're going to be speaking to people who are in positions of power to be able to push the Palestinian narrative in South African discourse a little bit more. And really the point here is to advocate and to ventilate for the case of the liberation of Palestine, not just limited to a week, but over a whole month. And this coincides very nicely with the South African Human Rights Day. Of course, the Sharpeville massacre that happened stays with us. And so it's something that we feel very strongly connected to. And it's something that we can go back to annually and say never again. And now we have the unique opportunity to see the same sort of atrocities perpetrated in a different place, but in 2024. And instead of retrospectively saying never again, we actually get to take action and to say that we need to stop this right now.
You touched a bit about, conscientizing, and this is like one of the focus aspects of Israel Apartheid Week. And what has been, said a lot, it might not have been very vocal, is and I want to ask you if maybe this is maybe one of those weeks or in the whole month, all of the activist groups will be focusing on that. The issue of Palestine in South Africa, it sometimes feels like it belongs to a certain demographic, and other people feel like they're not involved. Maybe even some of the events that are happening, are in certain areas. Would it be something of concern, and would it be something that you guys, who are actively involved in the activism space, would be looking to change to bring it to the broader society, which I assume would make much more impact because there's power in numbers, essentially?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly, as a progressive political and activist movement, we believe that the struggle for liberation needs to be rooted in a class struggle. And more importantly, in the context of South Africa, it needs to speak to the experience of Black people. And so I agree with you in saying that so far, the discourse and the support for Palestine has been limited to a Muslim middle class demographic, but we're really working to broaden people's perspective on the issue, because it's primarily not a religious conflict. It's not a religious genocide. People in Gaza aren't being persecuted by virtue of the fact that they're Muslim. They're being persecuted for land. They're being persecuted because of settler colonialism. And the reason that Palestine should be a very central part of all South Africans' lives is because these are issues that we've not only dealt with historically and overcome, but we're still dealing with right now. So, for example, the themes that we try to really hone in the PSC are things like land dispossession. We've seen the problem with land and housing, not just in South Africa, but in Cape Town alone. This disproportionately affects colored communities and Black communities who are in a lower to working middle class. Secondly, it comes down to racial discrimination. And so in Israel, Palestine, that's along the lines of Arab to Israeli. But in South Africa, we still see the remnants of apartheid coming out very strongly. So I think these themes of that touch on human rights as opposed to religion is really what we're trying to amplify and what we're trying to use to broaden the movement, because we believe that through a mass movement, we're able to apply the right amount of pressure to government to get them to implement sanctions, to get them to prosecute people who join the Israeli occupation forces, to get them to implement an arms embargo, to get them to implement BDS against Israel. And it's only with mass support that we're able to do that.
Shanae, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want us to touch a bit about how different is Israel Apartheid Week going to be this year. You mentioned that it's going to be a month long, but looking at how things are right now in Gaza and the ongoing atrocities that the people there are going through, how more amplified is it going to be? Considering it was launched 20 years ago, and right now things are probably at the worst that we've ever seen. But you're going to answer that after the break.
This is Salam Media.
It's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031-202-4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
After the recent attacks on Gaza, many families have been displaced with their homes left destroyed. Through your donations, our teams are on the ground in Gaza, providing support and delivering necessary aid to families affected. The people of Gaza need your help. Give hope. Donate today to Penny Appeal South Africa. www.pennyappeal.org.za 031 1100 573.
Are here on the ground with many appeal organizations in Gaza.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. You're still tuned into Salam Media, and joining me right now, chatting Apartheid Israel Week is Shaniaé Maharaj. And before we went to the break, we were chatting briefly about just how important this year's Israeli Apartheid Week is, and how different is it going to be, looking at just how heightened the Israeli occupying forces have been so aggressive, more than in any other years that we've seen, since the 75 years of the settler colonization of Palestine. Maybe you can answer that question. Just how different and how much more impactful do we want it to be, considering the circumstances?
So I think that's a really good question, and I think it's a similar frustration to what a lot of people are feeling right now, which is we've been protesting, we've been taking to the streets, we're showing up, we're donating, nothing seems to be materially changing. But I think as South Africans, we need to remember that our support for Palestine is primarily a solidarity movement. And so what that means is the obligations that we have is to continue that pressure, as opposed to saying that we're not seeing a ceasefire, therefore our efforts are meaningless. I think a lot of Palestinians, but also a lot of people in the international community, keep looking to South Africa for that kind of moral support, because number one, we did overcome apartheid through our own struggle, and so we have a higher moral bastion, and we stand on a stronger moral standpoint than other countries. But number two, I think in South Africa, people have experienced a reawakened sort of political consciousness because of the issue in Palestine right now. So what I mean by that is people are seeing the carnage in Gaza, and they're saying, not only is this happening in Gaza, this is happening right now in the Cape Flats. People are dying because of gun violence, because of gangsterism, because of these things that we haven't addressed previously. And so similarly, in the way that Palestinians find strength in our solidarity, as South Africans, we're seeing a renewed hope in our own political consciousness and our community mobilizations. And so I think that's the biggest difference between Israeli Apartheid Month now versus previously, where people just care a lot more and people are seeing things being done. I mean, the reason that South Africa was able to take Israel to the ICJ wasn't just because it had to honor its international obligations in terms of international law, but because it saw that people were taking to the streets. The government saw that there's a real concern coming from its people. And so I think in that way, if we're able to maintain the mass mobilizations that we've been having, it's going to be great. And I think the way it's going to come out and manifest in Cape Town is on the 21st of March, so on Human Rights Day. The Christian clergy is organizing a pilgrimage walk from Simonstown all the way into CBD, and people can join at any stage along the route just to show their support. And I think it's important that it's led by the clergy, which again shows that it is not a faith-based kind of issue. Instead, it affects all people. And it's very important that it's happening in the month of Ramadan, where people are observing a sort of spiritual reverence, because this is a way that they get to show compassion to all those affected by the violence of Israel, and broadly speaking, the violence of racism and settler colonialism in South Africa.
Shanae, another, issue that always pops up, especially with, Palestine activist group, is the approach. There's some, organizations and groups that feel the approach should be one that is intersectional, understanding that, the struggle of the Palestinian people coincides with other, injustices that are happening to other groups of people around the world and in different spheres of life. And there are others that feel like, no, it's not. It should be, treated separately and differently because it has its own, special and unique characteristics. And this has led to a lot of divisions, if I should say so, in activist organizations. How can we work towards transcending that and understanding that now is not, the time or place to be debating on whether or not the approach should be, but there are thousands of people dying in Gaza on a daily, and they are starving right now, and we should just transcend our own egos, essentially.
So I think, you bring up an important point of whether or not it should be a one-dimensional issue of Palestine only, or whether it should be intersectional. And I think the reason that the PSC is part of the camp that says the issue is intersectional is because we recognize that the root of all oppression fundamentally is the same and manifests in different ways. So when we fight for women's rights, when we fight for the liberation of Black people, when we say Black Lives Matter, when we fight for the liberation of queer people, when we fight for climate justice, what we're actually fighting against is imperialist structures that prevent people from firstly accessing the resources that they need, not just to survive, but to be meaningful participants in society. But number two, when we don't view things as intersectional, the actual results are much, much worse. So yes, we might get freedom for some people, but it won't be far-reaching, and it won't be the kind of freedom that's actually substantive and going to give people the kind of life that affords them dignity and equality and humanity. And so I agree that we shouldn't really get bogged down in what political theory we should be following. But I think the question should be broader. It's, who do we want to be free? And the answer to that is all Palestinians. And when that is our answer, and when we're guided by the humanity and dignity of all Palestinians, the struggle and the solidarity movement automatically becomes intersectional. We automatically start caring about women's rights. We start caring about the environmental impacts. We start caring about working class people. And so in that way, I think that's how we should be framing it. It's, who do we want freedom for? Everybody. And so that's why when we say from the river to the sea, it doesn't exclude any portion of that. We're saying that we want one democratic state ruled by the Palestinian people, because the land itself belongs to Palestine.
And before I let you go, are there any special programs that your organization PSC will be hosting? How can people get involved? People that want to volunteer, be part of the programs, how do they get hold of you?
So that's a great question. Right now we have Haider Eid, who is a professor from Gaza. Currently, him and his family are seeking refuge in South Africa. Professor Eid is in Cape Town right now. And tomorrow evening, we will be at Community House to discuss his new book called Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind, where he also draws on African scholarship to unpack what decolonization means. So that's tomorrow. And for events kind of later on in the week and in the month, you can find that on our Instagram page. It's at PSC_Cape Town. And we update that kind of on a daily basis with things that are going on. So please do follow us. We have an exciting program that we're sure is going to instigate change at grassroots and high levels.
All right, I think we're going to leave it there. Shaniaé, vice chairperson of PSC. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
There we go. That was Shaniaé Maharaj there speaking to us about Israeli Apartheid Week. It was launched 20 years ago, and this year they're looking to make it a month instead of the week, considering obviously the circumstances. I mean, if you can look at the numbers and what's currently happening in Gaza, in Palestine, it has just gotten out of hand to a point where it's a man-made humanitarian disaster, and it's something of concern. And I think it's a really, really wonderful idea that is made into a month to further raise consciousness and awareness to those that don't know and to those that don't believe that there's a genocide currently happening in Gaza. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to throw our eyes into Mozambique, where almost 100,000 people have been displaced due to renewed violence in that part of the world. We'll be chatting to Director of the Center of Democracy and Development, Adriano Nuvango, on this and more right after this.